Hey, good morning, RB community students and anybody else visiting us out on the internet. We're glad you're here. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about God's timing. And for me, one of the funny things is a lot of times people take a look at like when they think about God's timing, and they always like, oh, God, like it's a God thing when the timing is good and everything lines up. But the reality of it is what God desires for us is, even when it's not good timing, to still continue to be faithful. Pretty much everybody's heard the story of Jesus feeds the 5,000. Everybody knows how it happened. He's teaching and it starts to get late and everybody's tired, and they're like, well, we need to send everybody away. It's time for dinner. And there's not enough food, and Jesus performs a miracle. But what is really interesting about this story is the timing of the story. And for Jesus, this was pretty poor timing for what he had going on in his life. So immediately prior to the feeding of the 5,000 is Jesus, when he finds out that his cousin and good friend John the Baptist had been killed by King Herod. He had been beheaded, right? So we don't typically share that part of the story of Jesus feeds the 5,000, but if you take a look in Matthew chapter 14, basically in the first part of chapter 14 it's John the Baptist beheaded, right? So it's that whole story. And then it goes on, and so the beginning of Jesus feeds the 5,000 starts off when Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. So the story of Jesus feeds the 5,000 starts off with, I need to find a little peace. I don't feel great about this. I want some solitude, right? So they're like, okay, so how come there were 5,000 people? But it goes on to say, when Jesus landed, he saw a large crowd. He had compassion on them and healed their sick. So we look at this, and I know for me, I find myself in a perspective of looking for good timing, of like, oh, this must be a God thing because the timing is good. The reality of it is God isn't about good timing. God is about us being faithful in wherever we are, right? So Jesus saw the people. He saw that they were hurting, and he had compassion on them. So then it goes on and it says, as evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, there's a remote place and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food. So they basically, the disciples are looking out for the people. They're looking out for Jesus and saying, hey, it's starting to get late. We're in a remote place because we were seeking solitude and the crowd followed us, and let's send them away so they can get food. And Jesus replied, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. They responded, we have only the 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, they answered. And he said, bring them to me here. So I think what's important for us to remember is a lot of times when we're looking for God's timing, we're looking for good timing. And the reality of it is we're all quarantined right now. There's a lot of things in life that it's a bad time for, right? I just think of in this season, everybody has a tendency to like hoard things, right? And they had all the images of people buying tons and tons of toilet paper. So you know what's bad timing right now is to be generous. So what can you do to be generous? How can you give? How can you encourage someone? How can you bless someone in this season? And it's just this idea that our concept of timing is a little different than God's sense of timing, right? And Jesus was frequently doing things with bad timing, such as, the leaders were gathered and they were about to stone a woman in the court, and Jesus kind of was like he had no fear going into that situation. But for me, if I was afraid and there were a bunch of men that were about to kill a woman, I'm not like, would I naturally go into that circumstance? I would like to think so, but I would probably be kind of intimidated. And the reality of it is a lot of the men in that circle wanted to kill Jesus too. And Jesus ended up going to situations frequently where there were people that didn't like him, people that wanted to see him killed. And for Jesus, he had to do a lot of stuff with poor timing, right? And we're in a season for us where it feels like there's a lot of bad timing for things. It's a bad time to be generous. It's a bad time to like engage people in deep conversations because we're all frustrated and pent up. And I know that if we were willing to look past waiting for the ideal time, what might God be calling you to do in this season? What might be holding you back in this season from something you feel like God is calling you to do, but you're waiting for the right time? Because I know a lot of you guys are using a lot of time to play video games. I'm not saying video games are bad, but the reality of it is, you're playing a video game and your mom comes in, says, hey, you need to clean your room. To you, that's really bad timing, right? And then we get all grumpy about it. For me, I got a phone call on Sunday morning while I'm making pancakes asking me, hey, you were supposed to do this. And I was like, oh, shoot, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. And I got into that grumpy zone of like, I don't want to be doing this. This is bad timing, right? So my challenge for you guys is, what might there be out there that God has called you to do, that God might be encouraging you to do, that you feel like the timing isn't the best, but that you can still step out in faith and trust that God's timing, although it's bad timing for you, it might be good timing. Love you guys. Hope to see you soon. Bye. Always a good time to pet the cat.